season MVP. So if Scout wants to choose a time to lock in and remember why he was a world champion in 2021, it has to be today.
We're already here in draft. Some interesting notes here. Probably going to be seeing that Rumble. You have to imagine, though, that Sion becomes a priority here, or Ornn. That is going to be the expected counter. I think it really matches what JDG want to get. And Pantheon is nerfed on this patch. Took a little bit of a hit on his monster damage for his Q, his Comet Spear. So we're going to continue to see less of a priority on this champion.
Still came out as a ban just to show that a lot of teams are still respecting the power or have not scrimmed enough with it to really get a feel of whether his clear speed has been severely nerfed as a result. BLG opting in for that first pick, Trundle. This does a lot of things. It sets you up to get Sion for yourself or any other tank top laner for Bin on this next rotation, whereas JDG just opted in for the standard Rumble Taliyah trade.
Like we've seen with Rumble and Taliyah, it will mean that being able to play the side lanes is a little bit easier. We should expect for Xiaoxu to really have a handle on these lanes. Expecting for Bin to play tanks has been a way for teams to honestly punish him as a player. I think his Sion, he's trying to add Sion to his pool, and Bin needs a couple of games before he starts really showcasing his mechanical prowess on some of these champions. So right now for BLG, they have not a ton of damage. They have all of this setup like we were talking about and ways to punish a Rumble and a Taliyah. Now we need to see some of that damage come on through.
If this Ornn is locked in, I see two big beefy frontliners with little base damage and then a Trundle who, while yes, can win a lot of 1v1 skirmishes and scenarios, but he's range gapped and he can get kited. He can get slowed if there is a lot of things that are preventing him from being able to approach a fight. Right now, JDG have some of the best tools to do so. Rumble can slow you with the Equalizer. Taliyah can make your life hell trying to walk through Unraveled Earth. And now with the Wukong locked in, even though it's not a guaranteed combo setup pre-6 like some of the other skirmisher junglers we've seen, like with Xin and Vi, this is still a carry jungler for the hands of Xun. And now for BLG, Alk, I'm imagining that you really need to ramp up the damage with your last two picks.
And JDG do need to be careful because there's a moment in this game around 20 to 25 minutes where I don't think JDG are going to have enough damage to really punch through this front line, at least early on into the game. So we need to see them come with a game plan here into this second phase of draft. Already we're looking at support starting to get taken away. I think Rel becomes incredibly low value when you start to see what's on these opponents. Alistar shoots up in my mind when I look at what BLG want to try to get rid of. And in terms of AD carries, Kai'Sa for Peyz has never been a bad option so far this year.
And it would nicely work, at least with a lot of the dive identity that JDG have. Xun and Rumble want to go forward and try to at least create a lot of chaos that would set up. But JDG actually identified that, hey, BLG also have some decent ways to set up long-range engage with that Ornn and the Galio. So they try to get rid of the Kai'Sa away from Elk. And JDG, it's the Yunara slam for Peyz.
Okay. Wow, he wants to be able to play it. He has a lot of setup here. You have the Wukong, the Taliyah, like you were noting. All of these champions in the first three from JDG can slow a fight down. Whether or not they're going to be able to actually stop BLG is a completely different matter. Corki being taken here did get a couple of changes, but I think overall is a fairly similar champion. They adjusted some of his ratios for his Phosphorus ROM, but should be an early skirmisher here that BLG should be looking to play around early.
And because JDG don't necessarily have a true tank assembled in their composition so far, it's not like BLG are necessarily gated on or running into the problem of, hey guys, there's going to be this front line that we can never kill. These are all semi-carries, if not full carries from each of the members of JDG. But Wink has to now lock in something that will tie this whole composition together.
Yeah, he can't play Leona. I think Leona actually surprisingly gets a little bit of value here. Renata would be quite interesting with how low range BLG can be. The ultimate now, that alongside the bailout, could mean that JDG get the time in fights. Mark, we look at this team, there's a lot of health bars here from BLG. It's going to take a while for JDG to not only kill one member, but the entirety of Bilibili.
Yeah, the nice thing that is that Shun will at least be able to spec into a Black Cleaver so he can help armor shred a lot of the resistances that BLG will be stacking on both Bin and Knight. That should help out Peyz later the game goes on. And then both Scout and Xiaoxu should be able to at least figure out who's going to go Bloodletters, who's going to go Leandry so that they can burn down these giant health bars as well. When it comes to early game though, Alk, that's the thing about Trundle. You still have the leverage over a majority of the early game skirmishers in the game, and because Wukong kind of takes a while before he wants to start fighting, BLG should still have at least that nice bridge that allows them to get to the first 2 items in the game where these tanks become giant forces of terror.
My issue when I watch this game, or when I'm going to be looking for here in game number 1 of this series, is whether or not this composition from BLG is going to be able to properly move around the map. You have a Galio to be able to cheat. You have this Trundle who feels almost super powered with the lanes that he has around him. But can they actually execute on this? JDG have a ton of tools to be able to team fight. It's just about that mid game for them that has been a big worry.
And that's usually where a lot of these games get decided, that we have seen in Split 3. You get closer to that 2nd, 3rd dragon spawn, the Otacon comes up, and usually whoever is able to get that big fight around that objective can take the whole game. Let's see how it all unfolds between JDG and Bilibili Gaming in our first match.
All right. Okay.
Let's go.
So, early game already, we're seeing some 5 points. Shadow moving into enemy jungle to get some vision, scout out where Shun is. And when we watch this game here, Raafaa, I want people at home to be seeing how JDG move these solo laners in Xiaoxu and Scout. They're going to have a big task in front of them to make sure that they're setting up side lanes. They're making it difficult for BLG to properly position on the map, because as this game goes on, I feel like on 2 and 3, they should be very scary. You're going to be seeing Corki with Triforce and Muramana already done. Shadow with 2 items on this Trundle should be a huge scare.
Oh! On taking a page out of Perukia's level 1 Rel Flashbook. That's a lot of damage exchange, though, just on the Peyz. Both of his summoner spells were burned here, but Elk does take a lot of damage in the exchange, but at least he still has Flash and Barrier.
That's why I love Corki. The early skirmishing you get with the Gatling gun and the shred that's alongside it. Junglers are both pathing bottom lane now. So the difference in summoner spells, I wonder if Shadow is going to elect to skip one of his camps and just go towards bottom lane once he has level 3. Because that pillar is going to be so impactful.
Handshake. And he knows that On doesn't have Flash from before, but they don't have enough damage to actually take On out of the game. Elk is forced to burn his barrier, but because of that double range matchup into the tank and normal AD carry, Peyz and Wink are still able to win out the push for level 2.
Shadow's going to get spotted on Raptors here. This is really tough because Elk and On, they want to push forward. They actually want to play not on this wave, but the next wave that's going to be coming out of base here. They have an idea that Shadow is here. Corki just recalled. So this could actually turn into an advantageous position from JDG that all started from On looking for some early summoners.
Because of the push, not only from mid lane, but also bot lane.
They're swapping.
Shadow is forced to drop the red buff. And Shadow doesn't even bat an eye. He says, okay, fine. You know what? You win there. You'll be able to take my red buff. He'll still get his Krugs. And as you called it, Elk is running back towards the top side of the map for a lane swap.
This is huge for JDG, because not only did they stop the early kind of back and forth that we saw from these 2 bottom lanes, but Shun now gets an additional 2 camps on top of that. So the Wukong might be able to get to level 6 a little bit faster than his opponent. Doesn't need one of the grubs to hit that level breakpoint. Could even go for some scuttles here that might be able to make that breakpoint for him. So I want to see JDG now keep up the pace. Can we try to punish our opponents here?
Xiaoxu might be in trouble depending on where the wave is sat at the moment. They have an idea that there could be multiple members on the top side, though, as Shadow was pinged out and currently taking a base. Xiaoxu will not fall susceptible to an overextension on this minion wave that is currently nicely frozen by Elk and On the top side of the map. I'm curious to see if they're going to try to swap this one up. No, Xiaoxu is just returning back to the top lane and taking the long walk.
That's really tough. Thankfully, he is saving his teleport there. Bin did not, because he wanted to be able to immediately go back down towards his bottom lane wave. But as he can see, Peyz and Wink are holding this. I still think, all in all, you know, things said and done, this should advantage over to BLG. Yes, you are giving Yunara some time to scale, but it does mean that your Rumble is getting cut out from the game. So Ornn's going to be fine in the long term here. He's only, like, maybe a quarter of a level down on his opponent.
Yeah, Ornn will still be able to do the same thing with the Call of the Forge God. Meanwhile, Equalizer might slow, but it won't deal nearly as much damage if your Xiaoxu Rumble is not getting the farm and the econ that you would much prefer in a standard lane setup, but this is the choice that JDG are opting into, trying to give Peyz the best early game setup. And considering that Peyz has been one of JDG's best carries over the course of the season, obviously Split 2 being his most dominant, maybe this is their attempt at trying to reinvigorate that form.
I don't see 4 Yumis on my screen here for JDG. So
damn.
They're going to need to try a lot bit harder here. I want to see Karma support. Seeing Xiaoxu get engaged upon, loses almost half of his HP here. Very dangerous, especially with grub spawning in 2.5. This is around that time frame that we would see BLG and teams start to set their waves up and vision around the top side objective. Speaking of, we didn't get to talk about it during the draft, but if JDG can get hold of at least 2 grubs, I feel like they are in a really strong spot in this game to properly play these side lanes out.
And the nice thing is that Xun, with the push from both bot and mid, he's going to get an early push on this dragon relatively early, just to, you know, under a minute before it actually spawned. So this is plenty of time for JDG to get their bases back in, get some decent purchases, and JDG can now send their bot lane towards the top side of the map, get Xiaoxu out of the reverse swap, and this should put JDG in a spot where they can compete for grubs.
You say that, but they are resetting here, and for all of the hubbubaloo that we've had in the early game with no kills going on, but a lot of summoner spells, Peyz has his Flash and Cleanse coming back up, and Xun is barely a quarter of a level over his opponent still. So in terms of the spells that are going to be more important, I actually would favor BLG here, having the Hero's Entrance available versus a Weaver's Wall. I don't think is going to be as impactful.
A good point to take mention of BLG. We'll see if Bin even gets a chance to join a potential grubs fight, because his teleport will be coming up around the same time, whereas Xiaoxu just expended his teleport to come over to the bottom side of the map. If that is being tracked by BLG, that could be a teleport mismatch where JDG opt into a grubs fight where they don't actually have Xiaoxu ready to answer the call there. So we'll have to track that, since grubs will be spawning in the next 50 seconds here.
Do I think they win 4v5 is a really good question here. I mean, Peyz going to be close to level 6. It's Spellbook Renata, so I think some of the playmaking there actually opens up. I'd be interested to see if JDG do opt to contest for this grubs, as we were just talking about. Like you had mentioned, the teleport disadvantage will mean there'll be a numbers there in advantage towards BLG, but they have some tools. Shadow's going to probably finish his bottom side camps and then head his way up there. So good from our observers to show the bottom lane wave. I want to see how Bin and Xiaoxu interact.
I think the best thing that Xiaoxu can do is at least make Bin make a choice of, do you want to join your team in stopping us at grubs, or do you want to lose a giant minion wave, as he's just constantly in crash mode. Shadow making sure to not go for the Krugs. He needed to beeline back over to the grubs so that he can be there for the play. Xun is already the first one here in the river. Maybe they're trying to bait on into a fight and look for a quick pick. Nice Cyclone interrupting the crash down. Even with the flash, it's too late. On is turned off, and JDG pick up first blood.
But JDG now are missing out on that Cyclone. Will BLG continue to move forward without their support? It's Trundle with Subjugate available. They're going to move away from there. JDG, I love the control that we saw from them in both of their lanes. I was really hoping the observers would show us something in mid, because Scout has been holding Knight under his turret for the majority of this laning phase so far. So JDG, they get those first 3 grubs where they should have had a numbers advantage. A great punish coming out from them.
Yeah, and it's all due to the early setup play from Xun and the rest of his bot lane being able to punish on there. Now, JDG will be losing out on a potential blue buff on the bottom side of the map. I think that is the worst case scenario or the best case scenario there for yourself as Shun. You get
Your
all
inner
3 grubs
jungler
for
spoke
yourself.
out there, bro. Your inner jungler was like, worst case scenario, I'm losing my blue for grubs, man. Ah.
Listen, as a jungler, I don't want to lose anything to the enemy jungle, but
Real.
in a competitive 5-on-5, these are the sacrifices you must make for the greater good of the team. And JDG right now, having honestly, a more impressive early game than I was expecting against BLG going into today's match so far.
It's not like JDG have had the worst early games. Surely there were some. I know you remember the Talia Jarvan game that we saw from Jingdong, but for the most part, I feel like JDG have been relevant in the laning phase. It has just come from mid-game team fightings, and specifically watching how some of the carries on this team position. Peyz always really over-indexing because he feels like he has to 1v9 a lot of these games. Scout especially has had some woes so far, so we'll see how this game continues to develop. It's a small 1,000 gold lead here for JDG. And right now it's just some early game sparring. You know, we're testing, we're doing some test jabs to see where JDG and BLG are standing.
Yeah, not really any major plays have come from the mid lane. No use of the hero's entrance, no use of the Weaver's wall. Bot lanes have returned to their true home on the bottom side of the map. As we're getting ready for the next objective coming up in the next 40 seconds. Once again, Shun is the first one here on this side of the map. Might get a chance to poach some chicken nuggets away from Shadow as he is currently traversing for the blue side of the quadrant, and JDG are doing a decent job of setting up vision control to make sure that BLG have a tough time of trying to contest them in the river here.
They're holding this wave. I'm looking at top lane right now because both of our top laners are gonna have teleport soon. Scout needs to recall. Can they get this kill?
Shun is trying to really hold the Cyclone, but because Shadow shows up, he is forced to use it, and Shadow will hold on to the Subjugate. This will be a good ulti advantage in favor of BLG. Meanwhile, bot lane 2v2, knowing that both of the junglers are in the mid lane. Alk is losing a lot of HP here, but Peyz did have the Transcend to pull this fight off.
I don't understand why JDG were looking for that fight, because Scout was just, he needed to teleport back. He needed to get his reset, get back onto the map, spend a little bit of his gold, and he had no mana. So now we've basically forced our AD carry, our jungler anyway, to use the Cyclone. Wukong will not have that up and available. BLG, though, suffering because their bottom lane have not found good trades.
Subjugate has now popped. Weaver's Wall comes in, but the hero's entrance does as well. Wink tries to break up the fight with the hostile takeover, but they've lost their jungler in Shun, and Wink falls next. Like you said, Alk, no Cyclone means it's a lot more difficult, but here comes Xiaoxu with the equalizer, but just forces the flash out of Alk. But Scout answers with the flash of his own and throws a giant rock at the back of Elk's head. Call the Forge God already being used by Ben as he joins the fight, but this could be good for JDG. Just a way to flash onto Ben. He flashes and he still dies anyway. Scout is in a lot of trouble. Gets smacked over the head by Knight, but they answer back on a Shadow. It's an all-out brawl on the bottom side of the map.
And the new top laner for JDG comes through with a magnificent teleport flank, gets the equalizer, the flash away from Elk, and BLG have been so aggressive so far in this game, but it has not panned out. The early level 1 from Elk and on, and eventually backfiring on them. Then this trade here of trying to force onto Peyz. They had ultimate advantage, and still BLG were not able to find success. We take a look at this replay yet again. I mean, the first part of this looks so nice, but Alk and On are half HP before this dragon even starts. Where exactly is some of that preparation and setup that we were looking for from BLG? And the whole team is just completely segmented from this point on.
What benefits JDG a lot from this fight, because one of the big things that you called out was the Cyclone usage in the mid lane heavily impairs JDG's ability to try and take that dragon fight, but they forced it anyway because of the HP advantage. When we go back to live, Cyclone will be available, and a lot of these ultimate tools from BLG will not be available. So I'm pretty sure that JDG might have just taken the second dragon off of the respawn bases here. Boom.
There we go. We come right out of the replay, and you just felt it. You knew as a Shun appreciator, you're like, I can feel him hitting the dragon. The smite, my hand is over my fellow F key. You felt his hand touch yours. He smited it at the right time. So it's going to be BLG in response, trying to get some turret plates here. I think I'm getting to that point, though, Mark, where at the first item mark here for BLG, where's the damage? Right? Yes, it is a Triforce completed for Shadow and Elk, but I'm looking at Kanik, Rookern, what is going to, I assume, to be a Hollow Radiance coming out from the Galio. There is not a ton in being able to take down these opponents.
Oh, here we go. It's the It's the quota of Scout getting caught out here. He does flick them back, but he's got no reinforcements coming around anytime soon. Well, is this where it starts out?
No, not yet. Not yet. That one, that was a good play from BLG to punish him. He doesn't have flash. We know he doesn't have his teleport. Let's go ahead and play on the side lane. There's nothing for Shun to be able to get on this side of the map, though. So it's just going to be him walking out and having to use the Cyclone. Watch at how much gold is going to be going over to BLG during this time, because I'm looking at Knight slamming this turret, and JDG barely getting any damage with their 3 grubs onto structures.
And Rift Herald's coming up in the next 22 seconds, but Shun just used Cyclone. That's a big team fighting tool now gone for this potential fight. So BLG are going to have pressure on this bot lane turret, which needs to be answered. Shadow's going to quickly take a few chomps out of it, ensure that they acquire first brick off the map here. And that, I don't think that necessarily puts them at feats of warfare, because I don't remember who got.
Well, it's already completed. So
okay. The Rift Herald spawn G.
Still. Uh-oh. Uh-oh.
Maybe call the Forge God looking at Scout. He still does not have flash on this Talia, but thankfully for him, the Seraph's Embrace has just been fully completed and stacked, so he'll have an extra shield just in case if he needed it. But BLG wasting that call of the Forge God just to stop a little bit of the siege on the mid lane turret. That might give JDG the upper hand for this Rift Herald here.
I see Shadow moving down to his bottom side camps. BLG thought that they had perfect position, and even if they did catch Scout there, we saw it right as the call of Forge God was landing. He finished his stacking of the the Seraph's Embrace. So he would have been a little healthier, a little harder to kill from BLG. I don't quite get the angle that they were going for, and turns out that JDG get every single one of the early objectives here. Both early dragons, all 3 of the grubs, and now a Herald on top of that. JDG are eating good in this early game.
Yeah, this is the best early game objective setup and control we have seen JDG all split long. And like you said before, it's not like a majority of their early games were always terrible. There were some that were good, even some of their losses. It does come down to the test of how well they are coordinated when it comes to the big mid-game fights, which is the 3rd Dragon Timer as well as that Otacon, which is coming up now in the next few minutes here. And JDG have not quite hit 2 items on a majority of their carries. Everyone is now at the 1 item spike, and because BLG has Trinity Force on both Shadow and Elk, this is where BLG should thrive before their front lines start become beefier and beefier.
You know how bad you have to perform in a split that every time you do something good, we're like, okay, when's the bad thing going to happen? When are you going to throw the game?
That's how it is. JDG shouldn't have sucked early in the split for us to be excited. Look at that pillar!
Wait, what? What? The pillar was there while the animation of the charge was going through, so it just never goes through it? That is insane tech coming in from Shadow, and that saves them the mid-tier 1, which in the grand scheme of things may not mean all that much, but it allows for BLG to more comfortably move into these side lanes and escort players like Ornn and Knight here out of the side lanes back into their sides of the map. So a really interesting protect there from BLG, creative find to get back into this game.
Now, Loki, I didn't even know that you could do it like that. I thought it would have to happen during the other part of the Rift Herald animation, but you know what? Shadow just showing that all of his time putting the Trundle Fries in the bag for BLG has paid off and being able to find these, small niche scenarios here. BLG now taking their 2nd turret off the map collectively, and JDG trying to fight for control. 20 seconds until the 3rd dragon spawns.
So, we're at 18 minutes. We're talking about the dragon spawning soon. Let's think about where a lot of the gold has gone for BLG. Knight has now gotten 2 turrets with Trundle on side lanes. And while that's great for making this Galio really beefy and potentially difficult to deal with, JDG, on the other hand, are more comfortable with scaling, getting into this game. Now we've used this Trundle pillar, but Wink just gets to walk out. So, complete control of the summoner spells and the river here coming in from Jingdong.
Nice use of the Bellows Breath from Bin to ignore the seismic shove. Keeps himself pretty safe from the clutches of JDG. And because Elk has the push on the mid wave, Peyz is going to have to respond. So now Bin and the rest of BLG have control of the river. Scout might be caught here, forced to flash away from the call of the Forge God. And because Knight is now wrapping around on the right side of that blue quadrant, Scout can no longer approach from the safety of the blue buff entrance. JDG might just lose this dragon because BLG have full control.
Why did they give up control of the river? You have Xiaoxu teleporting into the mid lane tier 1. That should have been JDG holding their ground. We'll have to watch.
4,000 HP on the Dragon. Pillar already used. Weaver's Wall will separate some members here. On goes for the big engage. Hero's Entrance going to be big. Right on top. Equalizer. A lot of damage onto the front line. But the hostile takeover buys some time. And it gives JDG a momentary numbers advantage. Who's going to get the Dragon? Shun steals it from the hands of Shadow. Now he's locked in the pit. Still has a flash. Forced to use it over the wall. BLG, even with the first setup, lose the Dragon. And now JDG are looking for stragglers. Alk might be in trouble. Shun trying to dash forward as Scout rejoins the fray with the teleport. Alk is forced to flash away as Scout now looming forward looking for a seismic shove, but the rest of BLG hadn't covered enough ground to get away from the hands of JDG.
What was something we said from draft here, Mark? Oops, no damage is what was drafted by BLG. They have no ability to fight back. Maybe if Knight finishes a second item, and we had put a lot of stock into Shadow being maybe a pseudo carry for this team with a Strundle. But he's going for a tank item second here with the Spectre's Cowl and Kindle Gem. We gotta look back into this fight. Scout completely separates the team, and then where are the damage dealers? Elks and Super Narnia, and this ultimate from Wink tears apart BLG. The front line is unable to properly walk up to JDG, and Shun flashes forward, uses the Q for the auto extension range. The Smite Plus being able to beat up on Shadow, so now JDG are finding themselves at Soul Point.
And check out that stat there from our producer, Kelsey Moser, on tonight's show. Before this game, BLG had averaged the most Dragons in Group Ascend, but JDG has had incredible objective control in our first game against BLG. And I have to remind everyone, this was something that we mentioned briefly on the pre-show of this season. Okay, well, Scout's gonna die again. God damn it. Anyway, Scout, you're ruining my narrative point. As I was saying, before this match, JDG are 4-0 in game score, 2-0 in series score against BLG for the season. They've only played against each other twice in Split 2. And we were expecting that BLG, despite those numbers, should still be the heavy favorites given their current Split 3 season form. But Shun now has found Shadow, isolated from any other members of BLG because they've already run for the hills.
I think
this is now an opportunity. I mean, Otacon is on the bottom side of the map, so they might not have enough time to look for that objective in BLG trade a tier 1 turn on the mid wave. But, I mean, right now, Alk, JDG are doing some incredible work in this first 21 minutes.
Yeah, I feel like for BLG there, it's unfortunate that Shadow does get caught, but that felt more like, hey, we're going to trade on one side of the map. We were able to grab Scout. We got the mid lane tier 1 for ourselves. It is more than likely that this top lane tier 1, if they want it, can go down. But JDG starting to slowly bleed a little bit there on the map. BLG willing to trade there. As we take a look back at this replay, how did Scout... I mean, Scout thought he was safe in his side. Okay, I can't blame him for this one. Yeah. This is just two tanks constantly walking up. A problem that we noted from draft was how are Rumble and Talia going to deal when you have a Galio that's walking at you? Even a Trundle in the side lane. We've seen this be a repeat play, and some of the source of only kills that BLG have gotten have been just trying to find Scout on a side lane so far in this game 1.
And BLG now trying to set up in preparation for the Otacon, since that is the next big objective, with Cloud Soul coming up in the next minute and 30. And even though Scout has picked up the most deaths on his team this game, he is still finding ways to participate and at least contribute to the overall success of JDG when it comes to these team fights here. Peyz getting aggressive in the face of Elk. Forced to flash away. Wow, that was a lot of damage already. Peyz is forced out of this fight, and Wink might be in trouble. Equalizer from Xiaoxu is going to try to break it up here, but the call of the Forge God for the response knocks Wink out of the park and sends the rest of JDG packing. Elk is going to look for any stragglers here, as Peyz needs to ensure that he protects his bounty and does not give up that shutdown, but this should give BLG all the ground they need to secure Otacon.
Otacon and potentially a Dragon afterwards. That would be Soul in 40 seconds. They're investing the teleports coming out now. BLG make a massive pick from onto JDG. That could be a mistake that if we look at the end of this game with a BLG win, we'll be coming back to this moment here and asking, where did it all go wrong? A single pick there. And hey, if you're looking at this from the good side of JDG, they didn't lose very many summoner spells. Xiaoxu ends up teleporting into mid, and it seems like JDG still want to be able to contest for this dragon. Scout, please. Oh, thank God.
Well, that is Scout Flash once again burned at the hands of BLG. JDG now in position to contest for this dragon, but BLG have been constantly marking that Scout without a flash is an easy target to pick off.
How are they going to be able to fight this from BLG? You have no Call of the Forge God. You have no Hero's Entrance, not a Crash Down and a Magnet Storm from On. So the ability for them to actually properly fight this is really tough. JDG can still split up the fight with a Weaver's Wall. You can see that BLG are on the fly trying to problem solve their way out of this soul.
The longer the BLG stall this take, the better it is for them. Call of the Forge God might come up in time, but now JDG realize time is of the essence. They're trying to burn this down. Weaver's
Shadows
Wall
in.
already used. Shadow is in the pit. They're holding the dragon at 5,000 HP. They want to wait for some of their big ultimates to come up. Look at that. 8 seconds on Call of the Forge God. BLG have done what they needed, and now this big entrance from the side of BLG, this big engage tool, can now be used again to force JDG out of the pit. And they're going to have to ask themselves, do they want to take this fight? He's already in. Hero's Entrance right over the top. Equalizer trying to slow them down, but Shadow secures the dragon. JDG, can they win the fight after? They've already lost Shun. It's a 4v5, but so many health numbers are low here. JDG will not be able to find a single kill off the back of BLG. And the slow specter of JDG split is coming back to haunt them now, Alk. It comes at the mid-game when things start to go wrong.
That looked very dicey there, and okay. I hate to talk about it, but Peyz does no goddamn damage, bro. I saw him hit a knight who has no armor for at least like 10 to 15 seconds, and barely any of his HP was moving. I think part of that is the fact that Peyz and this Yunara, they deal magic damage, so with the Galio you get a little bit more in terms of your bang for your buck. Look at Peyz this entire time. Nothing. Knight flashes out because he's in the middle of 4 members. The fact that BLG were able to contest this, I think a testament to the fact that they were able to move forward with all of their beefy frontliners, and because, like you had mentioned, they stalled out that fight for their cooldowns.
And even though early game had gone so well for JDG, BLG are showing up when it matters in the game state. They have accumulated for themselves a decent gold advantage above JDG. Yeah, they don't have the first 3 dragons. They don't have the grubs. They didn't even get the Herald. But the Baron is up, and BLG found themselves in a better position in the game where you have 2 items on this Trundle. You have 2 items on both of your tanks. You're almost at 3 items on this Corki. And even though we questioned, hey, BLG might not have damage, well, you know what? JDG don't have any real tanks either, Alk. So
yeah, that's true.
There's gonna be a point where the tanks are so beefy, and if your damage dealers on JDG cannot cut through these tanks, it just does not matter.
Exactly, that's what we were talking about, right? Like, for JDG, it's a matter of can they outlast their opponents, and for BLG, it's all about a first-round punch. Can they use their health bars to kind of muscle their opponents out of space? We see them setting up around this Baron, and 3 items for both of our AD carries. What was the power spike that we were talking about here for BLG? 2 and 3. Corki is extremely powerful. We saw him in that last fight. Chunk Peyz out. There's no flash available for this Yunara. So BLG get to very freely roam into this river and I think use some of the good work that they had done early with Knight, taking down these outer structures.
Because now there's less room for JDG to safely operate from. I mean, look at how difficult it is for them to walk into the fog of war, into these river entrances and establish vision control. BLG are going to get to a point where they can start slowly bleeding the vision away from JDG and encroach that vision line further and further outside of their base. And then it comes to a point where JDG, it's no longer safe for them to enter that red quadrant safely, and BLG just have the free window of starting up the Baron or just continue bleeding these dragons away from JDG.
Something that Yunara doesn't do very well, and I think we see reflected in the Runons there for Peyz, is the fact that her wave clear is kind of piss poor. Compared to Corki, who just gets to use Q and then drop maybe a big one on top of the wave, it goes missing, and it allows for BLG to very easily push mid-wave, move into Fog of War, choke out the vision from JDG. And all they have to do, if they find maybe a pick here, obviously Baron's on the table, my eyes here, every 4 minutes, every 5 minutes, the Dragon needs to be contested. It's a minute and a half now starting. The teleport coming down onto this Baron for Rel. Okay, it's just on getting back onto the map.
On sealed spellbook, baby. Sometimes the teleports we see are like, oh, whoa, is there a play? Oh, okay, it's just support on sealed spellbook things. Understandable. And a nice thing here for BLG, they are not the ones pressed about trying to rush Baron anytime soon, which gives them the liberty to allow Knight and Bin push up on these solo lanes here, allow Shadow to steal more camps and bleed gold away from Xun, who, like we said before, this is a carry jungler for Wukong. And even though Trundle in this meta can operate better with economy than he did in prior seasons, we still think of Wukong scaling so hard off of each individual item spike, and the more gold you're able to bleed from that really takes away a lot of the team fighting power that JDG really need to have.
Some of the power that Wukong gets is mostly from his passive. The Stone Skin giving you more resistances the closer you are to enemies, or if there are more enemies surrounding you, so I like that. We get into this game now, Raafaa, and I'm looking at JDG's position. They need maybe one more item completed, either for one of their solo laners. Xiaoxu looks like he's getting closer to finishing his Riftmaker. Scout with that Blighting Jewel might finally be able to punch through Shadow, Knight, and Bin. But the gold lead that they've opened up for themselves, and think about the experience as well, because BLG got the Otacon off of that bottom lane play, and because of that, they're almost a full level over all of their opponents. Knight right now is level 17.
That's a big Galio, baby. And Shadow, because of the vision line that they had already established where JDG were being trepidatious in trying to approach the Baron, Shadow just solos the Dragon for free while Knight continues to put pressure on the bottom side of the map. BLG have complete control of the state of this game. And Peyz, oh, I see what On was trying to do there. Trying to see if he could
you felt
Peyz
the flash
into
key,
flashing.
man.
Yep.
I felt it. Yeah, that's also one of the power points of Trundle. If everything else goes wrong on Trundle, you can press E. You know I can trust that you can press E, hopefully. And that means that someone like Peyz has to use a dash or a flash, potentially. Scout, another immobile champion. Rumble has to use some of their summoner spells to get out of that situation. So Trundle's going to continue to be a big problem as the rest of BLG, despite not having the grubs, pushing their lane opponents around right now and making it difficult. We haven't had too much action as we've seen BLG slowly corral JDG to their side of the base.
And because the game is continuing to progress further and further with these levels, even though on paper it says 3,000 to 4,000 gold lead, it's more like a 7,000, maybe 8,000 gold lead because of all the ornaments that have now come online for BLG. So at this point, it just feels like JDG are cooked. The stat difference is so massive in favor of BLG, it really does feel like the last nail in the coffin was unironically the fight before Otacon and them being unable to secure it.
If they win this game, there's going to be a lot of question marks. A lot of question marks thrown BLG's way. So let's see, because we were talking about this draft as, okay, BLG got a lot of frontline. Can you maybe survive some of the early game playmaking? That hasn't necessarily panned out with how slow this game has felt. I mean, 14 kills at 32 minutes. Feels like an anomaly here. Oh my god.
On. Decent pick on the On. Shadow's too tanky, but On is forced to flash Weaver's Wall with Scout, trying to make the pursuit happen. Teleport from Xiaoxu. Equalizer is good. On is pinned. He's going to get caught, but the hustle takeover is now a 5-on-4 and advantage for JDG. Call of the Forge God completely is not used by Bin because he is forced to run away. JDG trying to dig deep and pull a miracle despite being down so much gold. Peyz takes a lot of damage, and JDG would have loved to start the Baron off of that pick, but they cannot afford to do so.
Dude, Alk is just 1v9ing these games. This guy is Mr. Consistent this year. For a BLG that has been floundering so much, Alk has had incredible games so far this season. I think back to the first time we saw BLG versus IG in split number 2. That Alk game, or the Ezreal game that we saw from him, 40 minutes, back and forth, but he has like a 10,000 damage team fight. He has been so impressive so far, and considering a player that really wasn't doing all that much last year when we were talking about the Bin and Knight show being so incredible. I'm glad that Elk is kind of pushing forward and being the one Mr. Consistent guy for BLG.
We definitely saw a lot of flashes of brilliance from him last year, but nowhere near the consistent day in, day out performances that he has been putting on, especially in this third split of the season, where we're seeing a lot more pickoffs from On. And even with the support going down, Elk is still pulling his weight for the two of them as JDG trying to find their way through this river. The pillar forces Shun to use his clone just to dash back to safety. Call of the Forge God now looking for a couple members here, forcing the flash out of Scout. Peyz dashes over the wall. Xiaoxu caught by the taunt, forced the flash as well. Hostile takeover. Catches only one on a bin. Maybe they can find a pick on the Shadow quickly, but here comes the hero's entrance. Shadow falls. Knight is going to try to turn this one around, but it's only onto the clone of Shun. Shun goes back in, has one more cast of the Cyclone, gets a Knight up in this Knight, but he's too tanky, Elk. JDG still cannot press forward their advantage, even with these picks.
Peyz is actually doing work in these team fights, but it takes too long for them to meaningfully make headway in this game. So we get another fight where a single player goes down, and then we reset 50 seconds before the Dragon. It has been JDG's sole point for the last 10 minutes of this game, last 15 minutes of this game, sorry. And they will always have the ability to make it happen, but they need to set up around this Drake right now. It's teleports coming in from On. Do they just trade this Dragon for a Baron? I'm not a huge fan of it, but you see the vision line that they're starting to set up from Jingdong? It is all darkness going into this river.
And if anything, BLG have the first say on the mid wave, and they can just challenge JDG to potentially taking a lot of structures through mid tier 2, maybe even the inhibitor tower as well. Bin already taking up space in this red quadrant entrance. The rest of JDG controlling the vision, making sure that it remains dark. The minion wave in favor of BLG down the mid lane, but no one is escorting it because they value the Cloud Soul denial away from JDG.
Big point we're watching here. No flash on Xiaoxu or for Scout. They are waiting for their ultimates. 8 seconds on that Weaver's Wall and 5 here for Wink.
Trying to burn it down. Knight is forcing Scout away. Call the Forge God completely
it misses.
Unused by Bin, but they burn up Wink anyway. Shun trying to commit to the Dragon, trying to burn Bin down. It should go over.
They got
Scout,
it.
It secured the soul for JDG, and now they can try to turn the fight on his head. They've already burned out Bin. Elk might be in trouble, and he's got the hero's entrance to back him up, trying to pursue Shun, but he was already forced to flash in the pit. Rest of JDG, if they can just live, this is a decent win for them now that they have the Cloud Soul on their side.
Raafaa, I won't lie here. I think finishing this soul was a mistake here for JDG. I think letting this game open up potentially for 5.5 minutes of a Elder on the cards, I don't like this. I really do not like this choice here coming in. I think for JDG, it's obvious you do want to be able to grab the movement speed that you get from the soul. We take a look back at this replay, and again, so many things going wrong. Wink stopping the College of the Forge God coming out from Bin, and then Scout making this impossible for Shadow to get into this. Remember, he used his flash on the top side of the map, so not an option here for JD or for BLG. And while they're missing some of that damage, that front line still living through a majority of this fight.
Yeah. Again, BLG are still ahead in overall gold stats. Not just what you see the number on screen, but also thanks to the ornaments that they've picked up for themselves. Shun has still yet to pick up a third item for himself, but the rest of his carries are picking ones up. Void Staff for Scout. Riftmaker for Xiaoxu. JDG are still trying to scale up and be strong carries for themselves, but BLG still remain to be such a giant wall that JDG have to break down in each of these team fights.
And even if things are equal to each other, when you have gold being this close, almost 3,000 here for BLG, those Orin items might be the make or break point here for BLG. It's a little bit more tank stats. I think for me, the thing that is most interesting is that Shadow opted to upgrade his Spirit Visage, so he'll get some more magic resist, some more HP and ability haste, but he won't have necessarily that damage or maybe some more utility that might come from a Dead Man's Play or Trinity Force being upgraded. So we'll have to see how much more BLG can actually get, and can they allow Elk to, stand tall and win them a fight?
And I do like that Knight has opted in for more damage-heavy items after his first two. Zonya's still kind of defensive, but the Death Cap, 4th item, that's a lot of AP now that is going to be coming through on this Galio. So it's no longer just a frontliner. It is someone that can threaten the backline if he gets on top of Peyz or Scout. Baron is being burned down, already below 7,000 HP. JDG trying to step in and force them off of it. They maintain the leash on trying to threaten him with a flank on the left side, but Xiaoxu is marking him. Call of the Forge God coming through. Wink throws out the hostile takeover. Scout tries to throw up. Shun kill the jungler before it goes down.
He got it!
He steals the Baron! He steals another objective away from Shadow. Peyz able to take out Alk 2. JDG are pulling a miracle out against BLG, the undefeated team. In split 3, Scout might get caught here. The taunt from Knight will land, and at least he gets some revenge. But Knight has now condemned himself to a death to JDG. It is a full ace coming in for the side of Jindong Gaming.
Oh my god, they've done it. They've got Baron. Shun has been on top of the smites, a mechanic that we have had some questions for whether or not he's really been as tight. But with 3 grubs and 20 seconds before the next member, I think JDG just won game 1.
On is up in 5 seconds, but he's not a carry. He cannot kill the waves, and the rest of JDG are operating 4 men strong. Peyz and the rest of JDG will continue to maintain their undefeated game streak against BLG for the season of 2025.
That's awesome. That's an amazing start to this series, and maybe it's that home crowd here in Beijing, but JDG look amazing up against our undefeated BLG.
I am so floored. This is game 1, though. I want to see JDG cross the finish line in the series in its entirety. But this is an amazing start and an amazing showing from a team that all game long we were voicing our concerns like, okay, this looks good, but you know, are they going to cross the finish line? And we even voiced our doubts where when they lost the fight leading up into the Otacon and they were down so much gold, we pretty much said, yeah, this game's over. BLG should win it. And here we are now, Alk.
So impressive. So many things, I think, went into that fight. And just the game as a whole. Remember, we came back from the draft. We're like, okay, I don't necessarily see the way for BLG to meaningfully progress the game. You have been on a tank, which in years past we might have had more criticisms towards. Then we also have Knight on Galio, who has been putting a lot more games in this year than he has in past. But where's the real carry threat supposed to be, aside from Alk? We have some of the best solo laners you can buy in the world, and we're putting them on tanks right now. Not a good look from BLG. I think only one of them. You can have Knight on Galio, but you gotta have something going on top lane. You gotta get that Rumble or something else here for Bin. You can't do both.
And there were a couple times where, you know, single picks, Bin was able to find the Call of the Forge God engages that he needed to. But there are also a few times where Bin is throwing out the Call of the Forge God when they're not in a position to actually re-engage or counter-engage. They were in modes of retreat. And there are even also times where someone was interrupting him and ensuring that there was no Ornn engage actually coming out. So I guess that's just the magic there. JDG thankfully high-rolled a scenario where Bin's forced to play a tank. Knight is also kind of on a tank. He spec'd into damage later and he was still a threat, but that last fight, Alk, I'm just going to be replaying it constantly in my mind because I went into that scenario thinking, okay, BLG should be able to keep them out of the pit. If Shun steals it, they should still be able to win the fight, but somehow Alk just died. Alk got blasted. And that was the Mr. Consistent that we were praising for BLG, so I want to know, and hopefully we'll see in this highlight reel, where it all collapsed for BLG.
BLG had like a crab tank comp. You know, we got a lot of armor surrounding the squishy bits, aka the one Mr. Carry in Alk. I don't know, man. Like, this composition is very weird here. I do like how JDG played out a large portion of this game, and for some of the players that we had some questions for, whether or not Xiaoxu and Wink were really going to be able to perform here, this Renata got so much value in so many of these fights. just looking at the ultimates alone, being able to stop the low-range composition that we saw come out from BLG, all of these hostile takeovers make it incredibly difficult for Bilibili to walk forward.
You know, despite all the picks that they made onto Scout throughout this game, for the most part, it looked like Scout was still at least contributing to the fight. He didn't seem like he was missing any crucial spells. Anytime he made a flash aggressively, it was to connect or confirm a kill for JDG. You know, I'm not sure if I'm ready to forgive Scout for everything that has happened this split so far, but as a whole, JDG stepped up big time in this game.
But it's these one-off games that give us false hope, where we're like, okay, there's some life here for JDG, and then we get 2 games in a row that are absolute stinkers. So, in a league that is known for some of its high highs and low lows in gameplay, I really want to see whether or not JDG can consistently apply pressure to their opponents here in BLG.
Finally got a chance to see what happened there to Alk. Peyz just found a moment where he flash W'd and just annihilated him. We're just at that stage of the game where Yunara just does insane amounts of damage.
Are we counting Scout dying there as Scout getting picked out?
No.
Okay,
that
I'm going to tell the mod team that we can turn down the timer.
This is the most that I can do. Look at the damage share. I think that's the biggest takeaway. Remember at the beginning of the game how JDG played their early,
almost
like 15 minutes out.
Jesus.
Peyz and Wink had a pretty good lane start where it was On that engaged early, burned both of the sums from Peyz, and yet they still hit level 2 for the wave control. Pushed Alk and On out of lane, forced them to lane swap away. Got a lot of gold for themselves, and then they got the first 3 dragons, the first 3 grubs, the Rift Herald, pretty much everything had gone their way, and Peyz had farmed up a storm and gotten so much gold for themselves. And we had talked about constantly, even when in prior series where we started seeing the specter of JDG's potential downfall in this split, that we're like, okay, as long as Peyz can still be the dominant carry he was in split 2, everything is fine. But even then, in some games, as you pointed out before, Peyz doesn't have a lot to work with if everyone on this team was falling behind and not able to do their part. Well, this is a game where in the moments where space was created for Peyz, he reigned supreme.
Honestly, I think this was a Shun game, if we're being clear. Like, Shun ran the map despite having, you know, he started off with those 2 camp leads over Shadow. He is moving with his team into right spots, and his smites were on point tonight. So at least in this game 1, if there's anybody that gets an MVP, it's going to either be Shun or Peyz. Yeah. And really exciting stuff if JDG can actually get over the hump and find a win. You know, defeat the undefeated BLG. I hear MVP music. Give it to me. There it is. Shun, dude, he continues to be one of the bright spots on a JDG that has been full of lowlights.
Yeah. And the funny thing about Shun here is, once again, this is against his former team, BLG, that he went to World Finals with against T1 just last year, and constantly proving that he is able to find moments where he can walk away from a game and say, jungle diff. But, you know, he's now done it to 3 different junglers on BLG's side so far. So we'll see if that story continues going into our second game of the series. But before we toss it to break, we want to remind everyone that if you would like to support LPL English, consider becoming a Coffee member, because Coffee is the best way to support the LPL English project, since the vast majority of your contributions will go directly to the show. A lot of the initial payments go into upgrading the broadcast, but a huge bulk of it pays on-air talent and content creators. Subscribe to our Coffee linked in chat to unlock perks like early access to content and the ability to ask interview questions for our unique on-site interviews. Without further ado, y'all, time to toss the break. We'll see you on the other side for Game 2.